Welcome back to r/Reddit stories. We have 4 stories. HOA tried to punish us, told us to stop them if we can. Malicious compliance cost them 16% of the annual HOA income. This happened several years ago and is a multi-year long story. I'll keep it as succinct as possible. We installed cameras in front of our home that were looking at our vehicles. Part of the camera angles did overlook parts of 2 neighbors' properties, one backyard and one side yard. The cameras were battery-operated and had a function where you could gray out areas that you didn't want to film. When motion occurred in the grayed-out areas, the cameras would not be activated to film. The neighbors' entire properties and several bushes on our property were grayed out. We did this when installing them. One of the neighbors was a friend and had no issues with this whatsoever. We showed her the camera angle, and she said she didn't care whether or not we grayed out that area. We still left it grayed out over battery life concerns. The other neighbor's name was Karen. Not really, but we all know why I chose that name. Karen was on the Homeowners Association board, and, as you can imagine, we didn't get along with Karen or the HOA board. We told Karen about the camera and showed her the grayed-out areas at the same time that we told our friendly neighbor about it. It was simply an FYI conversation. We are not on friendly terms. Not an asking permission conversation. She told us to take the cameras down immediately or we would regret it. About a week after we hung the camera up, we got a notice from our HOA that we were violating the bylaws. The bylaw in question? A nuisance to your neighbor's bylaw. There wasn't a specific bylaw preventing placement of cameras, so this is all they could find to try to punish us. We responded with a letter detailing how we were not violating any bylaws or laws in general, and asked them to cease and desist. We all know how these stories go, though. They did not cease, and they did not desist. Their first response? The HOA has the right to enforce these bylaws. Try to stop us if you think you can. These types of responses were, unfortunately, quite common from this board. We entered this battle with one goal in mind: to cost them as much money and time as possible. The HOA hired a lawyer specifically to fight us. To my knowledge, this has not happened to any other residents. In the following 4 months, we ended up costing the HOA over $4,000 in lawyers' fees fighting this battle. For reference, the entire HOA income was $25,000 per year. When it came time for our official HOA hearing over the matter, we had successfully postponed it, thanks to an attorney friend, 3 separate times. There were over 100 back-and-forth emails with the HOA attorney and ourselves. Each one of those emails was a 15-minute expense for the HOA, and I was happy to follow up a follow-up question with another follow-up question if it meant the HOA attorney was going to keep billing them. Did I say follow up enough times? We didn't actually want to take this battle to court, so we ended up removing the cameras the day of the hearing to prevent being fined, even if the fine wouldn't hold up in court. The HOA decided in the hearing that we were guilty, surprise, surprise, of violating the bylaw. They couldn't fine us, as the bylaws don't allow a fine until after a hearing has been held and the cameras were already removed. In the end, the punishment was a sternly written piece of paper on the attorney's letterhead, delivered via certified mail, that stated that we were not allowed to place a camera on our home that had the potential to invade a neighbor's privacy. Keep in mind, the letter specifically stated the camera could not be placed on our home. We left the cameras off of the home for about 4 months until the annual HOA meeting. You should have seen the look on the HOA board's faces when I asked them to explain the $4,000 line item for attorney's fees that simply stated, "Title searches, attorney fees." The board actually tried to hide the fact that they spent $4K trying to fight us over a couple of cameras by putting the fees in as title searches. Needless to say, that meeting did not go well for them. About half of them lost their positions on the board. The other half, including Karen, unfortunately, remained on the board. About a week after the annual meeting, we installed new cameras facing the same direction as the prior cameras, only this time we installed a post in the ground and mounted the cameras to that post. The admonishment we received after the hearing specifically stated that we were not allowed to install cameras on our home and said nothing about putting them on a post. They did send a letter to try to tell us to remove the cameras, but a sternly worded response indicating that we were prepared to fight them actually worked this time around. I guess they didn't want to spend another $4K fighting us. We didn't receive any follow-up responses, and the cameras on the post are still installed to this day, over 2 years and running strong. If you're enjoying r/Reddit stories, please like and subscribe for more. Story 2. The boss didn't trust his team, so I built a system to track every move we made. A few years ago, I worked at a mid-sized company where the atmosphere was, let's say, not ideal. The manager had this ever-growing suspicion that people were just waiting for the right time to leave. He believed that morale was low and that the team was barely holding it together. And while I'm not sure where he got this idea, he started imposing more and more controls on us to monitor productivity. One day, he introduced a new rule. Every task, every email, every conversation must be logged. No exceptions. The justification? I need to know exactly what you're doing, and I need to be sure nothing's falling through the cracks. Now, here's the problem. My team was already working at full capacity, dealing with multiple tasks every single day, but suddenly, we were being told to log everything. If you were sending a simple email, you had to log it. Writing a report, log it. Setting up a meeting, log it. Every little action had to be documented. I tried explaining how ridiculous this was, but the response was always the same. I need to make sure you're on task. He didn't trust us to do our jobs, so he created a system where every move had to be tracked and validated by someone else. I didn't see any way out of it, so I decided to comply. But I wasn't going to make it easy. I started logging everything, and I mean everything, down to the smallest tasks. Simple emails? Logged. A quick 10-minute meeting to touch base? Logged. I even started logging the amount of time I spent thinking about the best way to word my emails, because, hey, it was part of the task, right? To top it off, I made sure my logs were detailed as hell. I meticulously logged every action, no matter how insignificant. The result? It was chaos. The logs were piling up, but all they did was waste more of my time. The manager was reviewing everything and asking questions about tasks that had no bearing on the big picture. Meanwhile, I could barely get through a day without constantly being interrupted by the need to document my every move. And then it happened. The manager finally asked, "Why is everything taking so long?" I gave him a simple reply. "You asked for everything to be logged." He didn't like hearing that. But the best part was when he finally realized that the whole system was making us less productive. His solution? We were told to just log what's necessary. The policy was quietly dropped, and things slowly started to return to normal. But by then, I had already built something of my own. After all the frustration of logging every single action, I realized there had to be a better way. So I started building a tool that could automatically track everything without the annoying back and forth or wasted time. I wasn't looking to change the whole company. I just wanted a way to do my job without all the micromanagement. What started as a workaround eventually grew into a full-fledged solution, and I realized that this frustration had pushed me to create something far more effective than the system we were using. Funny how the lack of trust can sometimes spark the most innovative ideas. Story 3. Malicious compliance of the population. I just remembered the Gesetz zur Modernisierung der gesetzlichen Krankenversicherung, also known as the Health Reform of 2004. Introduction. It was about making the system more efficient. Part of this was the introduction of a patient co-payment, €10 per quarter for the practice, 10% co-payment for medicines and medical devices, at least 5 and a maximum of €10. The politicians had the idea that we go to the doctor for fun and thus place unnecessary strain on the system. A popular claim was that seniors constantly make doctor's appointments so that they can read magazines in the waiting room. The co-payment for medicines and medical devices was mainly based on the idea that people would get medication prescribed by the doctor for fun and thus place unnecessary strain on the system. Medical devices would be crutches, wheelchairs, etc. Let's start. Practice fee. Everyone was against it when it was introduced. Doctors, patients, and health insurance companies were not happy either. IRRC, the malicious compliance, starts in the second or third year after the introduction. Slowly, two things happened at the same time. People said to themselves, if I have to pay, then it should be worth it. On the one hand, that meant that if you had already paid for the quarter, you tried to squeeze in as many doctor's appointments as possible. On the other hand, towards the end of the quarter, hardly anyone went to the doctor who hadn't already paid. So doctors' offices were totally overcrowded at the beginning of the quarter and very empty at the end. I don't know how many politicians' speeches I heard, radio and TV discussions, newspaper and magazine articles saying that people should be reasonable. People should go to the doctor on the last day of the quarter and, of course, pay the full fee for the quarter, instead of going the next day and have a full quarter. Amazingly, the practice fee was already withdrawn at the beginning of 2013. It is therefore amazing that our politicians normally hardly withdraw any law. Unfortunately, the co-payment for medicines and medical devices remained. Story 4. You want me to work my exact hours? Okay, no problem. A few years ago, my manager decided to crack down on workplace discipline. His first rule? Everyone had to work their exact scheduled hours, no more, no less. If your shift was 9 to 5 o'clock, you couldn't start a minute early or leave a minute late. Now, I'm the kind of person who likes to finish what I'm working on, even if it means staying a little past my shift. But fine, rules are rules. At 5 o'clock sharp, I started dropping everything. Middle of a call with a client? Sorry, it's 5 o'clock. Let's pick this up tomorrow. Writing an email? Draft saved, computer shut down. My co-workers followed suit. Soon, the office was a ghost town at exactly 5:01 every day. It didn't take long for chaos to erupt. Deadlines got missed, calls were dropped, and clients weren't happy. Management started to notice. After about 2 weeks, the rule magically disappeared, and we were told Just do what you need to get the job done. Funny how quickly things change when you follow orders too perfectly. Update. A lot of people asked if this was about working long hours. It wasn't. The issue was flexibility. Many of us liked starting early or staying late when it suited us, but the policy forced us into rigid schedules, which didn't work for how we liked to manage our workloads. When they realized flexibility made things smoother, they backtracked fast.